Imagine the weight of ruling an empire at war, the endless reports of soldiers dying, the whispers of betrayal in the Senate, the plague creeping through the streets of Rome. Marcus Aurelius sat alone in his tent, not as an untouchable emperor, but as a man surrounded by uncertainty and fear. In the quiet, he opened his journal and wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Think about that. With the fate of millions resting on his shoulders, Marcus reminded himself that true power was not in armies or politics, but in mastering his own mind. If a man in his position, facing the collapse of everything around him, could free himself from fear, what does that mean for us today? Why do we, with far fewer burdens, still find ourselves trapped by anxiety over emails, job interviews, or the opinions of strangers? What did Marcus Aurelius know that allowed him to stand firm in the face of chaos? And why do his words still strike with such force centuries later? The answer lies in 5 timeless lessons he left behind. Lessons that can teach us how to live free from fear. Fear has never left the human heart. In Marcus Aurelius's time, it took the form of invading armies, deadly plagues, and political betrayal. Today, it shows up in different clothing, uncertain economies, fragile careers, loneliness hidden beneath social media smiles, the quiet dread of not being enough. We imagine ourselves more advanced, more secure, yet fear still slips through the cracks of our daily lives. We wake up to the pressure of expectations, carry the weight of what-ifs, and end the day haunted by everything. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. These words are not just philosophy, they are survival. Marcus Aurelius faced a world he could not control, war at the borders, political games in Rome, disease spreading through the empire. Yet he returned again and again to this single truth. Fear grows when we fight battles we cannot win, when we try to bend the world to our will instead of mastering our own responses. The more we chase control of what lies outside, the more powerless we feel. Think of how often this happens today. We scroll through endless news headlines and feel waves of panic at everything beyond us. Economies shifting, natural disasters, politics spinning out of control. Or we obsess over the approval of others, hoping to manage their opinions, only to discover how little power we truly have. This chasing leaves us exhausted and afraid. Fear thrives in the gap between what we want to control and what reality allows. Marcus's reminder is simple but sharp. There is one thing no force can strip from you, the freedom to govern your own mind. Thoughts, choices, and attitudes remain yours, even when everything else is taken. Imagine someone criticizing you harshly. Fear rises because you feel your worth threatened. Yet here lies the Stoic practice. You cannot control the criticism, but you can control whether you accept it as truth. If you turn inward and remind yourself that your value does not rest in their words, the fear loses its grip. In daily life, this can become a practice of drawing circles. In one circle are the things you truly control, your actions, your words, your focus, your effort. In the other are things you never fully control, the opinions of others, the economy, the weather, the past, the outcome of your risks. Fear floods in when we step into the second circle, but when we remain in the first, we reclaim calm. Each morning, Marcus wrote to himself as if rearming his mind before the day began. You can do the same. Begin the day by asking, what belongs to me today? What can I actually shape? If you keep your energy there, fear will still knock, but it will not rule. You cannot command the storm, but you can steady your hand on the rudder. And in that steadiness, strength appears. We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality. Seneca wrote these words nearly 2,000 years ago, but they describe the modern mind perfectly. Fear rarely lives in what is happening right now. It lives in the stories we tell ourselves about what might happen. The imagination is a powerful gift, but when it runs wild, it becomes a tyrant. It paints pictures of disaster long before reality has spoken. Think of the way anxiety builds before a job interview. You replay scenarios in your mind, stumbling over your words, the interviewer frowning, rejection waiting at the end. Your heart races as if these things are already happening, but they exist only in imagination. Or consider the quiet panic of waiting for a message that never comes. The silence becomes a stage where your mind performs every worst-case outcome, even though nothing has actually occurred. In both cases, the suffering is not caused by reality, but by the movie running in your head. The Stoics understood that the mind can exaggerate threats until they become larger than life. That is why Marcus Aurelius trained himself to return to the present moment. He would remind himself that the future is nothing more than a chain of present moments, and the only place fear can truly touch us is here and now. Ask yourself, is the danger real at this moment, or is it only imagined? Most of the time, you will find that your fear is smoke, not fire. A simple practice helps. When fear rises, write down exactly what is happening now versus what you are imagining. Right now, I am sitting at my desk. My heart is racing. I am imagining failing tomorrow. This small act separates reality from illusion. You begin to see how much of fear is self-created. With practice, you can interrupt the chain of catastrophic thoughts and bring yourself back to the truth of the present. Fear feeds on shadows. When you turn the light of attention onto it, it often shrinks. Seneca's wisdom invites us to challenge the imagination, not obey it blindly. You may not be able to silence fear entirely, but you can strip it of its false power by reminding yourself, it is not reality that terrifies me, but my thoughts about it. And thoughts can be questioned, reshaped, and released. Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body. Seneca's words remind us that fear is not always a signal to retreat. Often, it is a signal pointing toward the very place we need to grow. What we fear most is frequently what we most need to face. Fear, then, is not the enemy. It is the map. Think of the fear of speaking in front of others. The heart pounds, the voice trembles, the thought of failure presses down. Many spend their lives avoiding this fear, convincing themselves it is too much to bear. Yet those who step into it discover that the fear shrinks with each attempt, and in its place grows confidence and clarity. The same is true for rejection. We fear the word no, so we avoid asking, trying, reaching. But in doing so, we trade growth for comfort. The Stoics did not seek out fear for thrill or bravado. They practiced voluntary discomfort to train themselves against it. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to expect insult, challenge, and difficulty each day. Epictetus advised sleeping on the ground or eating coarse food at times, not because luxury was evil, but because practicing hardship makes fear lose its teeth. When you have trained your mind to endure discomfort willingly, the unknown no longer paralyzes you. In modern life, this can be practiced in small ways. Choose a fear and step into it gently. If you fear silence, try sitting without your phone for an hour. If you fear rejection, make a request you might normally avoid. If you fear discomfort, take a cold shower or leave the comfort of routine. These acts are not about punishing yourself, but about reminding your mind that fear is survivable, that it does not hold ultimate power. Fear points to the edges of your strength. Beyond those edges lies growth. The person who never faces fear remains small, trapped inside an invisible wall. The one who trains with fear expands, discovering that the wall was never solid at all. Seneca's wisdom tells us that just as muscles are built by strain, the mind is fortified by difficulty. Each time you lean into fear, you are chiseling away at weakness and carving strength into your character. In this way, fear becomes your teacher. not your master. It is not death that a man should fear, but he should fear never beginning to live. Marcus Aurelius spoke these words not to dismiss death, but to confront the truth that most fear grows from our refusal to face mortality. We live as if life stretches endlessly ahead, yet we know it does not. Fear clings to us because we avoid this reality. We fear aging, we fear loss, we fear time slipping through our fingers. Beneath all these lies the fear of death itself. Modern life makes it easy to hide from this truth. We distract ourselves with endless scrolling, with constant busyness, with goals stacked endlessly into the future. But behind the noise, the quiet dread remains. One day, all of this will end. Instead of facing it, we run, and in running, we give fear power. Marcus and the Stoics chose a different path. They practiced memento mori. Remember that you must die, not to fall into despair, but to live more fully. Think about how often fear steals life from us. We decline opportunities because of what might go wrong. We waste days in worry about things that never happen. We postpone joy, telling ourselves there will be time later. But what if later never comes? To face death each day is to cut through fear's illusions. When you accept that life is brief, fear loses much of its grip. Suddenly, the embarrassment of failure, the sting of rejection, the uncertainty of tomorrow becomes small in comparison to the greater truth. Time is limited, and to waste it in fear is the real loss. Practical application begins with reflection. Each morning or evening, pause and ask, if this were my last day, how would I live it? What would I say? What would I let go of? This is not meant to create panic, but clarity. It reminds you to act, to speak honestly, to love without hesitation. Even small reminders can shift perspective. A symbol on your desk, a phrase in your journal, a moment of silence at the start of the day. Death is not the enemy, it is the horizon that gives shape to life. Marcus's wisdom is a call to begin living fully, to step beyond the paralysis of fear and into the urgency of presence. When you no longer fear death, life itself becomes richer. Fear no longer chains you because you have already embraced the truth that cannot be taken away. All of this is temporary, and that is what makes it precious. It never ceases to amaze me. We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinion than our own. Marcus Aurelius put his finger on one of the deepest roots of fear, the fear of what others think. More than failure, more than pain, many of us fear judgment. We live in the shadow of imagined criticism, shaping our choices to fit the approval of strangers, and in doing so, we hand them power over our peace. In today's world, this fear is magnified by constant exposure. Social media makes every action public, every mistake open to commentary. At work, we hesitate to speak honestly, worried about the reaction of colleagues. In relationships, we hide parts of ourselves to avoid rejection. Fear of opinion builds invisible chains, keeping us from living as we truly are. Marcus found this absurd. Why should the noise of others weigh more than the quiet truth within your own mind? To live free of this fear does not mean ignoring people or refusing connection. It means remembering where your true compass lies. You cannot control whether others praise or condemn you. Their judgments rise and fall with their own moods, biases, and limitations. What you can control is whether you betray yourself by chasing their approval. The Stoic path is to live by principle, to measure yourself against what is right, not against. Now it is your turn to reflect. Which of these fears holds the strongest grip on your life today? Is it the endless attempt to control what cannot be controlled, the restless images of the imagination, the hesitation to face difficulty, the denial of mortality, or the weight of other people's opinions? Take a quiet moment and write it down. Bring it into the open where you can see it clearly. Fear grows in the dark, but it weakens in the light of awareness. Each day, practice one small Stoic exercise. Ask yourself in the morning what belongs to your control and what does not. Pause when fear rises and ask whether it is reality or imagination. Step deliberately into one discomfort that you usually avoid. Reflect on your mortality with humility and gratitude, and remind yourself that the voice of your own conscience matters more than the applause or criticism of the crowd. If this message has stirred something in you, carry it forward. Share it with someone you know who is wrestling with fear. Subscribe if you wish to continue walking deeper into the wisdom of Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics. Most importantly, live the lesson. Freedom from fear is not a distant goal. It begins the moment you decide to master your own mind